as an answer to a committee member's question. That'll be how that will have to be handled.
Okay,
Thanks.
perfect. Thanks.
We're open for questions from the committee. Senator Jent.
Can I offer myself as an informational witness too, and I'll sit down? Heidi Hanford, Montana Connect and Patients Out of Time.
Thank you. Senator Jent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question for John Redmond, please. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Redmond, you indicated that I believe you're involved with a high-intensity drug trafficking area, and I recognize that as one of the terms used by the White House Office on Drug Policy, otherwise known as the drug czar. I was wondering, does that make you familiar with the federal criminal laws on drug trafficking?
I'm not familiar with the specific laws. I'm familiar with some of the issues surrounding, especially in California and along the border.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Redmond, one thing I was interested in, would you be able to compare the cost of marijuana, which is legal under the California initiative, and the cost of marijuana that is sold by the illegal drug dealers?
Marijuana, even under California law, is not legal. What it gives is an assertive defense. And what we have in California, though, is kind of I don't know the exact legal term, but kind of an exemption from that illegality, just as if law enforcement in California cannot carry fire, or there's a law that says no one can carry a firearm in California. However, law enforcement has an exemption from that law. So that's how it works in California. In terms of the dispensaries and how they're operating, even the California District Attorney said that storefront dispensaries are outside the law within California under the guidelines and under Prop 215 and SB 420. But what's happened with those storefront dispensaries that are outside the law, the cost of the marijuana within those storefront dispensaries mirror the black market price. The reason they do is because they're illegal operations.
Have you seen any connection between the illegal sale of marijuana and drug conspiracies or cartels or gangs and the use of medical marijuana in California through the dispensaries or whatever, however they get it there?
Sure. As I testified before, in terms of organized crime, I had mentioned that there was at least one member from the Armenian Mafia involved in dispensary operations in California, as well as there's a gang whose territory includes San Francisco and Oakland in the Bay Area, and that gang ran a multi-million-dollar business operation. They operated 10 warehouses in which vast amounts of marijuana plants were grown, and law enforcement officers went in and raided and found over 9,000 plants on one raid. And a criminal enterprise, which is what they, move it beyond just the selling of it, and with storage facilities and firearms and as well as marijuana.
And one last question, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Redmond.
Follow up.
If I'm a Montana highway patrolman and I stop a vehicle and I see a 1-pound bag of marijuana in the console, I don't know how a pound is about like a loaf of bread, or is it smaller?
It would be, if you clean all the sticks and seeds, it would be smaller.
Smaller, okay. And I see a 1-pound bag of marijuana in the console, and there's 2 people in there in that car, one with a medical marijuana card and one not. Is there any way to tell if that marijuana sitting there without interrogating the passengers is medical marijuana or illegal marijuana?
No, and the problem, even with the medical marijuana in California, the problems that we're seeing, and especially in regards to driving, is that there is no current testing for the intoxication of marijuana. You can do a breathalyzer for a test for alcohol, but for marijuana, the only test that exists is through drug recognition, which is a law enforcement drug recognition, which takes, is it 3 weeks, or I don't know the exact length of time. I'm sure how long it is, but it at some cost to law enforcement, they would have to go through that, and then it's very similar to a field sobriety test.
Well, Mr. Chairman, one more. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Redmond, what I'm getting at this, we'll put this hypothetical a different way. Suppose I am an officer and I enter a house on a domestic dispute, and I see that there are a number of medical marijuana plants growing in the mudroom, and whatever our law says, 6 or however many, one person is allowed to have in that mudroom. And instead I see 18 marijuana plants. What are those other 12 marijuana plants?
I see your point now in the question. In regards to criminal enterprise, when you look at a plant, what medical marijuana laws have done in California is kind of grade the area. It's the same thing that's happened in Mexico with the drug cartels. It was 20 years ago, the marijuana coming out of South America and going through Mexico was simply, the Mexicans were drug traffickers. Then that's they felt they didn't need the drug cartels in Colombia to do that, so they took the risk, and Colombian cartels were willing for them to do so. So what happened was, as that went through, that's how the drug cartels came into power. Now, as it goes over to California, we're having that problem as well. With medical marijuana, it's graying the area of what is supposedly medical marijuana and what is happening with the drug trafficking organizations. We don't have drug cartels in California, so I want to be clear on that, but we do currently have drug trafficking organizations.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, may I, and I don't have any further questions for this gentleman, may I please ask a question of Representative David Howard, if he is here?
Is Representative Howard here?
Mr. Chairman, if we're waiting to see if he's outside, perhaps I could direct one of my questions to County Attorney Nick Murnion, who I believe is in the room.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Murnion, you've been a county attorney for as long as I've been practicing. Is that right? How many years?
Senator Shockley, Senator Jent for 32 years, actually. So.
And have you noticed any increase recently in the use of marijuana in youth court crimes that you've seen?
Well, it's interesting you asked that. I mean, I just had a hearing on Tuesday with a 14-year-old that had went through treatment, got out, attacked her mother, found out marijuana was the issue. And so, yes.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Murnion, what is the connection between marijuana-related offenses and the possession of the defendant or someone close to them with a green card in the cases you've looked at in your county?
Well, it's very confusing. I mean, I can give you an example of doing a search warrant. We seized 18 plants, found out there was a card for 6 of them. Now you have to give 6 plants back when you do a seizure. We actually got sued for illegally taking 6 plants in that case. If you stop a car, has marijuana, you observe it in plain sight, you don't know if there's a card holder in the card or not. So, I mean, it has presented a tremendous problem to law enforcement.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Murnion, have you participated in the past with these multi-agency task force with the FBI and the DEA and so forth in any of your prosecutions like the Billings Drug Task Force? I know you come from rural county, so I don't know how y'all do it there, but.
Well, if I go back far enough, and 15 years ago I did when we prosecuted the Freeman, but you're not talking about that. But yeah, I mostly deal with the Big Muddy Task Force, regional task forces that do a great job. We haven't had a lot of federal involvement in northeastern Montana, a little bit right now.
And Mr. Chairman, Mr. Murnion, just to summarize, even though Montana has a medical marijuana initiative, would you agree with me that in all of the 50 states right now under the federal laws that you've worked with the task force, it's absolutely illegal to grow marijuana, to distribute it, to ship it out of state, even though the feds aren't prosecuting it, the medical marijuana side of it now?
It absolutely is illegal, and I think that's the issue, of course. I see 2 violations of the rule of law with medical marijuana, and I am a big proponent of the rule of law. The first one was an initiative that sought to basically nullify 2 laws, one for possession and distribution, one regarding how we approve drugs in this country, dating back to 1906. And the second act, it wasn't a very big problem until February of '09 when the U.S. Attorney General decided that in 14 states, because of resource issues or whatever, we wouldn't enforce the law anymore. Only in the other 36 states. I, for one, think that was wrong.
So, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Murnion, the same 12 marijuana plants in Montana that you seized, that, or excuse me, the 6 marijuana plants in Montana that you had to give back. If you'd have been in another state like South Dakota, you could have kept them and charged them under state law or federal law.
Exactly. We would have a clear mandate of what law enforcement's supposed to do, and right now that's pretty muddied.
And I want to thank you for coming, and thank you for all your years upholding the rule of law. I think that's really the issue. And
Thank you, Senator.
appreciate that. Mr. Chairman,
You guys keep referring to a green card. Are you talking about these red, white, and blue cards? Because I really resent that dog whistle.
Senator Jent?
yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. For Kay Parmeter, I hope I said your name right, the nurse from Missoula, please. Mr. Chairman, Ms. Parmeter, when you were here before, I know you wanted to tell us or conclude about what had happened to your son. In about a minute or less, would you be able to do that? Because I'm interested in hearing what the final outcome was.
Well, when medical marijuana came about, he was clean and sober and living at our home for 6 months. Well, as soon as all of his friends started getting a green card, he started using again. He went out on the street. He was living in a storage unit. He was using every day. He's now $50,000 in debt. And he told, and I don't know if I said this before, but the one thing that he told me was that, you know, the only thing medical marijuana has done is to lower the price and make it more accessible. Right now, he is clean again. He's been clean for over a month. He has a job, but he says, I cannot go out. I can't go anywhere because he is an addict. He's a marijuana addict, and everybody's using. It's legal, and so he feels that he's restricted if he wants to stay clean and be productive citizen.
Okay.
We also have a foster daughter who is, when medical marijuana started, she talked before you, 2 years ago, about meth. And as soon as medical marijuana came about, she started using. She's been out using, just sleeping wherever for 1.5 years. No job.
And just one follow-up question, Mr. Chairman, Ms. Parmeter, and just not from a medical point of view, but a parenting point of view, do you believe that marijuana, medical or otherwise, in your experience as a gateway drug with dealing with these children, just a yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Definitely.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, I have one more person I want to ask, is the gentleman from the Montana Narcotics Officers Executive Director, Mr. Long, please. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Long, during the interim committee, the business of this committee was principally to study the DUI laws, and we talked about drugs and marijuana. I'm afraid we didn't reach any sort of a resolution this time about marijuana and driving and so forth for any bills that we got before us. At least we didn't, that came to the Senate side. What have you seen as far as in the fatal car crashes, the percentage of those that involve a THC concentration in either driver or deceased passengers?
Mr. Chairman, Senator, I have seen data from the State Crime Lab. They're not here. They could better address this, but I have seen data from them that shows an increase in the substantial increase in the number of traffic fatalities that have THC present.
Okay.
And I think that, if I recall right, it's around 800% in the past 3 years.
Okay, thank you. And I have no other questions for Mr. Long. And Mr. Chairman, thank you for my indulgence.